Good afternoon and welcome to the latest edition of Tree Talk with myself, Jack Neville, and Matt O'Callaghan of the Weekly Observer and Vale Star. I can see the smile on your face, Matt. The club action is back. We had a hectic weekend with the senior, premier intermediate and junior hurling championships kicking off. We had many of our Limerick heroes in action and so many more of the club players that we've become so accustomed to. So we'll go back over all those games and look ahead to round two, which takes place this weekend. So stay tuned for that and more.
The impression of the game you get out with what you put into it's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the war court today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it hard. He's put it hard.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
As always is the case when we're live, anyone feel free to comment in to say how your team got on the weekend or who you think is going to win the championships or whatever, any questions you might have for myself or Matt. But I suppose there's a lot of talk about the split season, Matt, as the inter-county one came to an end and there was no real break between Limerick winning 3 in a row and the club championships come back. But it was as successful a weekend as they're going to get in any club championships. There was nearly all the games, I think there was only bar bereavement that went off without a hitch, and it's just brilliant to have all the clubs back in action. And you know, the weather is decent from one day to the next. It could be terrible, but you know, for all this talk, it is brilliant to have the clubs back.
Jack, it's just simply unbelievable. As I said, there's a permanent smile on my face for the next 3 or 4 months while all this action is going on. The big problem, of course, is, Jack, to try and pick and choose between what games to go to. But Jack, what a start! What a start to the Limerick Senior Hurling Championship. Absolutely, without exception, it was marked by great hurling, marked by big crowds, great excitement. And Jack, something that, you know, we saw the Limerick players over the weekend after completing 3 in a row All-Ireland titles. You know, that they would be forgiven for being slightly off the mark, but not a bit of it. They actually stood out, you know, in all the games. Like, and I was at 2 games now in the Senior Hurling Championship, and Kieran Barry is only a member of the Limerick subs. He was a member of the Limerick subs going in the All Ireland final. And what an extraordinary transformation in him as a player. And we'll be talking about it in the context of a day and a hand, how he has matured and evolved into being a fantastic player because of his involvement, first of all, with UCC, I suppose, Han, and his first year now with Limerick. And if you ever wondered why Limerick are All-Ireland champions, if you were in Ballygran on Saturday night, you would have got an answer, you know. And to see the performance of Colin Coughlin and to think that he's not on the first Limerick 15, it gives you a sense of the actual strength of what's available at John Kiley's disposal. But overall, it was a fantastic opening weekend. I saw games across 3 levels. I saw it in senior, Premier Intermediate, and in intermediate. But Jack, unfortunately, you know, the games went off without a hitch. But there is an element of discontent out there, and I suppose it's only fair to say it, and I don't know what the answer to it is. But the whole plethora of games that are being played on top of each other. You know, the constant narrative that I met over the weekend was, why aren't the games more spread out? And they're talking about more spread out over the weekend. Like, for instance, this Saturday night, we have 4 senior hurling championship games and 4 Premier Intermediate Championship games in direct competition.
Yeah.
You know, and there are people, Jack, in this county, and there are quite a number of them. And there's an insatiable appetite out there for hurling at the moment. There are people that would go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday to watch hurling. And having so many games condensed into the one evening, I think is bad, and it would appeal to those that have power to do something about it, to go and do something about it. Because I don't want to be jumping the gun now, but the weekend after next, we have basically it's a free weekend as far as senior are concerned, but the county board judiciously are using the week to pick up on one of the additional games in the Premier Junior or the Premier Intermediate Hurling Championship, because as we know, there are only 5 games in the senior and intermediate groups, but there are 7 in the Premier Intermediate. And the games are spread out over 3 nights, which is a good idea. And I would appeal for more of that. And also what a lot of people were looking for and talking about it, and what they were talking about was the lack of double headers. Now, I don't know if there's some reason, maybe I'm missing something, but again, if it's possible to have double headers, I think we should do it. And of course, it's hugely taxing, Jack, on our referees. All these games on in the one night, because the referees work as a group, and as you know, when you see in games, they support one another by acting as linesmen and this, that, and the other thing. But when there are so many games on, they're too spread out and they're unable to do it. So I think that we should have a general look at it in the interest of in the interest of the public, and also in the interest of our referees, who by the way, Jack, over the weekend did an excellent job without exception.
Yeah, you make very valid points there. I don't envy, and I'm sure you don't envy those making the fixtures, but it would be.
I certainly don't, Jack. And look, this is not a criticism, because if you ask me about the whole structure of the championship is excellent. And we've said this time and time again, and the manner in which we run off our games is excellent, and it has proved to be so in the past. But if we could tweak it that little bit, I think we would satisfy an awful lot more people, and we would head nearer to that utopian land of perfection,
Yeah, and I think that it's just the appetite for Limerick Hurling at the moment. There's a cafe below in Ballysteen now. I'd recommend anyone to venture down there below in Baycastle. It's a lovely little cafe now, in fairness. And there was a few young lads playing hurling that I'd imagine a few years ago probably wouldn't have been playing hurling. It's just it's so much in front of us now, and we're so successful. It's great to see, but if all the games are clashing, you can only get to one, and generally you'll probably go to your own team, and you're being robbed of the chance to see other players. I, for one, would love to see some afternoon games on maybe a Saturday or a Sunday. I know it's probably harder for people to get there, but I love that sense of waking up in the morning, even only a few hours to go to a game. But that's beside the point. But hopefully, as we get later into the championship, there'll be more room for maybe earlier games, or as you said, double headers. I suppose with COVID, it kind of put a stop on all double headers. So now maybe we can start to reintegrate those back in. But look, that's for the powers that be. Hopefully,
absolutely, Jack. And it's not a criticism of the powers that be. I understand, having been a former board officer, way back in the dim and distant past, that that there are issues when it comes to things like this, and there are issues of different things. But I would appeal to them, the powers that be, just if they could put on their thinking caps and maybe tweak it a small little bit, I think an awful lot more people would be happy. Now, having said that, those that were at the games were, and rightly so, extremely happy with the fare that they saw, because the fare that I saw over 5 games, Jack, I thought was exceptional. And I suppose a summation of it would be that this Limerick Hurling is in a rude state of good health at the moment.
Yeah, it definitely is. And we'll just go through the senior championship to start with, and this is results from round one. Kilmallock 223 to 2-9 winners over Patrick Swell, and I'd say that's the game we're talking about first. You had an Pierce left it late 220 to it's 118 against Doon, and a Dare and a Hand obviously played out a draw 115 apiece. Mungret St. Paul's beat Limehouse Kennery 116 to 113 in their first game back in the senior ranks. Ballybrown were 118 13-point winners over Black Rock, and South Liberties were 119 to 20-point winners over Gary Spillane. The standout result, I suppose, was the 14-point win for Kilmallock. I know you weren't at the game, but you can tell a lot from the score line. And you talked about the Limerick players hitting the ground running. They did. Kilmallock obviously have the large representation, but all the talk coming from that game is two young fellas. And we had picked out Shane O'Brien, that he was going to make the step up. It was going to be pretty seamless. He showed that. I think he scored 1-4 in the night. But Conor Hanley-Clark was one that you had mentioned would play out the field. I wasn't so sure. I thought he was so good in the goals for the 20s that it'd be hard to see him out the field. But those two lads really lit it up, as well as the likes of Oisin O'Reilly at the defence. They were teak tough. I thought Phelan O'Reilly was very good as well at half hour. But those two lads, Conor Hanley-Clark and Shane O'Brien, is the perfect tonic for Kilmallock, because after you win a county, everyone is saying, oh, you need to add one or two. But that's not always the case. Limerick have pretty much done it with they're about the same 15. But Kilmallock already have two in that have hit the ground running. And if anyone doubted before the game, Matt, they certainly won't be anymore.
They won't, Jack. And, looking at it, and we predicted that Kilmallock would win. Before I went to any of the matches, after the Ahan game, when I got hold of the program and got home here and started looking at the teams, and the immediate thing that strikes you, and we mentioned it last week, we mentioned about these two guys last week as to what they were capable of doing, and I'm not in the slightest bit surprised by the performance of Shane O'Brien and Conor Hanley-Clark. But Kilmallock have lost Kieran O'Connor and they've lost Liam English. And they've actually strengthened, because what a position to be in. You lose your centre back, and the man that you have to slot into it is Paddy O'Loughlin, an All-Ireland winner.
Yeah.
And then you the two forwards that have that came in, Shane O'Brien and Conor Hanley-Clark. I think Kilmallock are in a very, very strong position, Jack.
Very strong.
That their side has strengthened, because if you take it, Jack, they have 6 of the All-Ireland senior squad, and they have 2 key players, albeit Conor Hanley-Clark is playing out the field for Kilmallock. 2 key players of the Limerick under-20 All-Ireland team. Yeah. Like that in itself, and add in Paddy O'Loughlin, who's an All-Ireland winner, check their challenge is not to be discounted. Now, I suppose if you look at the graphic of the scores that you put up there, if there is one surprise among them, I think the only surprise has been the margin of Kilmallock's victory.
Yeah. We wouldn't have called that before the game, but they were thoroughly deserving of that for that performance.
Yeah, but then again, you have to look at the other side of the coin, because, and you have to look at Patrick Swell's situation. No Brian Bunny after almost 2 decades, and the influence that he brings. No 2-time hurler of the year, Keane Lynch. No Josh Considine. No Kevin O'Brien. They're 4 leading key players, crucial players in any Patrick Swell strategy. That that Patrick Swell were down. Yeah. So you had Kilmallock strengthening considerably, and Patrick Swell probably weakening considerably. So that to some way goes to explaining the result that we got.
But Kilmallock really, they conceded 2 goals early on, and I don't know if it was maybe a bad thing for Patrick Swell to start so good, because I'd say it kind of kicked Kilmallock into life, because by half time they were ahead. It was 12 points to 2-3. But those lads last year, the likes of Oisin O'Reilly, you know, he'd obviously won an All-Ireland before last year, but was off the panel, really came into his own last year. He continued in that form. He was a bit deeper, still chipped off 6 or 7 or 5 or 6 points. You know, even Micheál Houlihan was quiet, you know, which is another good thing for Kilmallock, that not everyone hit their peak. It's not as if they're not going to get better. Like, they can get better, and they have a challenge down the horizon that we get to that. But I'd say for Patrick's well, it's a case of, okay, it's very hard to see them into strength semi-final now. Can they just get through this, get into quarter-final, and hopefully they'll have those boys back, as you mentioned. You know, they're not the strongest in terms of depth, so they need their big boys playing. If you lose 4 starters, you're obviously going to lose that impact. And I suppose Jason Glenn was probably their best forward last year for a lot of it. He's back in the goal now, so I wouldn't lose hope for Patrick Swell, but certainly backs to the wall. And then for Kilmallock, very hard to see a downside from that performance. Like, it's available to watch back. If you go into the Limerick J website and go to Limerick J TV, you can watch back that game. Like, the performance of Kilmallock was pretty much flawless for a lot of players, and they are champions at the end of the day. Now, they will play Na Piarsaigh this weekend, and we'll get into Piarsaig's game now, if you're happy to move on from Kilmallock.
Yeah.
As well.
Quite happy.
Piarsaigh left it late. They were trailing 118 to 16 points. And we had talked about Dave Dempsey as one of the most consistent players in the club championship, always good for a goal. He gets that first goal to kickstart the revival, and Conor Boylan then gets the other goal. We've obviously seen how good Conor was this year. Like, Na Piarsaigh are just so good at winning. You know, they don't always have to be at their best. Now, I wasn't at the game, but they don't always have to be at their best. And for Doon, then I think it's a really disappointing win, because I can't remember the last time they beat Na Piarsaigh. They've lost, obviously, 2 county finals, a couple of semi-finals. It seems to be a monkey on their back that, you know, that could set them back a bit. And for Na Piarsaigh, it'll give them huge confidence. And they play Kilmallock this weekend, but we'll get into that game. But from a results point of view, very disheartening for Doon, and obviously hugely positive for Na Piarsaigh.
Absolutely, hugely positive. I saw Na Piarsaigh playing in the league final. I saw him playing in the league semi-final as well, in which they were awesome in the first half. Left Gary Spillane overhaul him in the second half. And Gary Spillane led with going into injury time, but for a couple of Kevin Downs' points would have caused a major shock. Some the following week in the league final against the Dare, they were simply one word: awesome. And I on my way home, I was scratching my head from the team, from the Na Piarsaigh line out, and all I could find would be 7 at a stretch, possibly 8 championship starters, which you know, which gives you a sense of the strength of Na Piarsaigh. Like, for instance, there was no William O'Donoghue, no Casey brothers, no Ronan Lynch, no Boylan brother. You know, Carl King only came on in the last few minutes. You know, they're awesome strength, but Doon will be scratching their head this week as to what they have to do to beat Na Piarsaigh at this stage.
Yeah,
like they had a glorious opportunity to get off to a winning start, and you know, they whether they allowed or just Na Piarsaigh up through the gears and pulled it out of the fire. What will it do for Doon? You raised the question there, June. Your remarks on it, Jack. I'm not so sure. I think they will regroup. They will regroup. They have a Dare this weekend now, and they will see it as an opportunity to get back to winning ways when it's not one of the top 4 that they're playing. Were they to be playing Kilmallock this weekend, it may be a different story, but and that's no disrespect to a Dare, because, like, you know, for the last 5 years it's been the same form. We're belting this out every week. It's the same 4 that have contested the semi-finals, and you know, that puts a hand and a Dare in a very difficult position in Section A as they try to break into it. And you know, I think Doon will be really chomping at the bit this weekend to get back to winning ways. It is an opportunity. It's an early opportunity to get points on the board, which will be very, very important for them. But whether to fail a second time, they could be in trouble, because Dare have already picked up a point.
Yeah, and I'll cut across you there because before we get into this weekend's games, we will finish a hand versus there 115 all. You were at the game. I wasn't there myself. I heard an awful lot about Tom Morris. He was excellent in the day, but that it could have went either way. There was no, a draw was a fair result.
A draw was a fair result, Jack. There's no use in saying otherwise. But having said that a draw was a fair result, a hand will have a lot of head scratching to do as to how they left the game slip when they hit 19 wides over the game, over the course of the game, which was phenomenal. Now, they were culpable enough to in that regard in that they had 14, or 15. The statistic 13 they had. The statistic anyway was simple, Jack. There were 32 scores in the game and there were 32 wides.
Okay.
So between them, and they ended at 115 apiece, you had a 50% conversion rate, which is fine when they're playing one another, but when you come up against the top four, not good enough.
Yeah, I suppose they're hoping that they can get that one out of their system. And look, it's the first day back for all these teams. For a hand, they obviously place a huge emphasis on the 3 county boys, and they've only probably had them for the bones of a week. So trying to embed them back into the team isn't going to be very easy. That was last weekend's results. This week, it comes around thick and fast, and the standout game has to be in Piercing versus Kilmallock, a repeat of the 17 final. And kind of like Doon, Kilmallock really haven't got that win. They have got a couple of wins over Piercing in the early rounds, but they haven't, got a big win over them since 2014, that county final. That they're flying at the moment. They're coming into the game as champions. Piercing left it really late against Doon. That Kilmallock will probably look at this and say we can lay down a marker here, and that when we come back in 3 weeks' time, that we are the team to beat. Whereas Piercing will be kind of saying we're favourites in the eyes of the bookies. Let's prove it. It's a real fascinating game.
Oh, it's an absolutely fascinating game out in Doon on Saturday night, and I'm looking forward to going out to it. You're right. Just as Doon were in need of a vital win over Piercing, so are Kilmallock. And I have a sense that this might be Kilmallock's evening. Were Kilmallock to put themselves into a position that Doon put themselves into, winning by 5 points late in the game, I'm not so sure that they would cough it up. It's going to be a hugely interesting game. Like it's a game with a stellar cast. There are so many big names on each side, but I have a sense on this one that Kilmallock might just edge it, Jack.
Yeah, I'll get your predictions down the end, but it's a one that's really hard to call. If Kilmallock played like they did against Patchwell, it's hard to see any club team in any county beating them. They were just, everything they did was so slick in terrible conditions as well in Newcastle. Not the pitch, obviously. The weather was fairly miserable. That if they can reproduce that, but often we see the sight of that light blue jersey, like the black and amber jersey before Kilkenny, or like the Limerick jersey now that you're nearly beat before you're playing, that they just have that aura, and they've built it up by winning so many counties that, Kilmallock would just have to look at this as a game, as a game, and not get too ahead of themselves. But, if they can win, they're onto a winner there. And it's very hard to retain in Limerick, but if they were to beat Piercing, you'd have to have them as odds on to retain.
Well, I don't know about odds on, but just to put it into context, the magnitude of this game, it's between two clubs who won 10 of the last 12 Limerick Senior Hurling Championships. The Piercing 6 and Kilmallock 4. That is the scale of, and that's a sense of the level of dominance that these two clubs have enjoyed. Patrick's well have won the other two, so over the last 12 years, nobody's got a look in other than those three, even though Doon have been featuring in the last 4 for the last 5 years and have featured in a couple of finals but haven't got over the line. So that gives you a sense, and if you look down through the cast, and as we spoke already about the number of players that are involved with the county team, the number of players that are involved with Limerick, and there are some players on the Piercing side, sitting out looking for 7th county medal this
Yeah.
year. There are oodles of them in the Kilmarnock team sitting out looking for a 5th county medal. And this is in a county that has won 4 of the last 5 All-Irelands. So it will give you a sense of the level that these two clubs are at. Whether they're going to detach themselves from the rest for this year, hard to know. Like in the Piercy got smacking after being beaten in the semi-final by Patrick Swell last year. Quite obviously, and I saw, and you can say when it comes to the championship, forget the league. But I saw signs there in those league games that this was a side with a desperate determination. That I saw a side on a mission, even though they were short an awful lot of players, and I could only think of one mission, and that was to atone for last year, and get back the Daily Cup. So this is going to be a fascinating scrap in June on Saturday evening. But I just have the sense that there's a bit of momentum. I just have a sense that Kilmarnock might just get over the line on this one. But it's only a pointer of many to what might happen later in the year.
Yeah, and I'd imagine look at the draw, but I feel like we'll probably see this matchup again. So if you were to a second time, you'd be hoping that you were winners in the first round. But that game is obviously live on Limerick TV this Saturday night. I just said at 7:00 in June. Anyone looking to get the link to purchase it, it's on the Limerick website in the Limerick TV column, or else it's on Sport Limerick's website in one of the articles is up there. But we'll have it shared in our socials closer to the game. And I'll get your predictions for all the games towards the end, Matt. Another thing coming from that game is if someone wins that game, they're guaranteed to top the group before the break, because obviously a Han and a Dare only have a point and Doon and Patch will have none. So if someone gets to 4, they'll be clear out of top. We mentioned Han versus Patrick Swell. That's also on Saturday night in Caherconlish. You were kind of saying that it was a chance for Patrick Swell to, get points on the board. But for a Han, this is their 3rd year up now. They've got the relegation final twice. They've won it both times, in fairness to them. But this is a chance, a wounded Patrick Swell, to get a win and really kickstart their senior championship campaign for the year. They got the draw against Dare. As we said, it could have went either way. But, there's a real opportunity there for a Han. And like last year, Patrick Swell, I won handily enough. I think they got 3 goals early on that game. They killed it off. That there's a chance there for a Han. And from what you saw on Thursday night, is there avenues for them to go and get at Patrick Swell?
There is. There was a lot of things I liked about Han last Thursday night, but of course it was all overshadowed by their wastefulness in front of goal. They got some horrendous wides now, and I came away absolutely convinced that. And especially then when I saw the Patrick Swell team sheet, and there was confirmation that, because a lot of it is hearsay, until you actually see the teams that such and such a one is missing. We all knew about Kane Lynch and Brian Murray had retired and all that, but when I saw the team sheet, I begin to say to myself, there is a real potential here for a Han to make a statement. But it's caveated by a vast and dramatic improvement in their conversion rate, Jack. The conversion rate of scoring or hitting 16 out of 35 scoring chances, not good enough at all. But I'm sure that they will be working it on the week, and I suppose you would give them a certain latitude on it in that it was their first day out, and but I have a feeling that there is an opportunity there for a Han in this one, and whether they'll take it or not, I'm not so sure. And it's an opportunity for somebody to put a dent on the top 4 and the big 4. And
for the first time in a long time, it seems like this could be a game where it's not really hope that there's a real opportunity for someone to kind of upset the odds early on. But, you mentioned those injuries to Kevin O'Brien and Josh Constantine. We don't know how serious those are. If they're back this week, you'll be really fancying Pat as well. And obviously, when you have Darren Burns and Aaron
I
Gillan,
actually think Kevin O'Brien is abroad, isn't he?
I'm not sure. I didn't check. No, he was on the extended panel, so his name was down. So I imagine
Maybe
he will be
that's
playing.
I don't know.
I imagine he will be playing. I don't think his name will be down if he was gone for the year. But there is a chance, and obviously then likewise for Doon and Adair. Adair obviously picked up a draw as well. And they'll point to last year's quarterfinal as a telltale sign that they have the ability to upset the odds. But Doon have to look at the fact that they led Napirsig for 50 plus minutes. It can't be we lost Napirsig. It has to be kind of you have to put a positive spin on it. As I said, I'll get to your exact predictions, but this one looks like it will be a Doon victory.
It does look as if it will be a Doon victory, but again, it could be tight enough. It would depend on how they recover from not the defeat to Napirsig, but the manner of the defeat.
Yeah.
Which sometimes can be far more wounding than the defeat itself. So I think this one is going to be quite close as well. I think Adair will put it up to Doon, but I think they'll come just a small bit short.
Yeah. Look, all they're hoping is for good quality games. That's obviously Friday. That kicks off.
Well, more of the same of last week, and we'll be all very happy,
Yeah, we will definitely be happy. That kicks off the action on Friday at 7:00 on the Childers Road. Obviously in Group 2 as well. Last week we had Munger St. Paul's, Ballybrown, and South Liberties getting the wins. This weekend we have Kildima Palace versus South Liberties. That's at 7:00 on Saturday evening as well. Kildima lost their first game against Munger St. Paul's, and obviously after winning the County Cup last year, there would have been a lot of hypes around them. They obviously have Kyle and Darren on the county team, but it was a brilliant game, and we'll get into that more when we talk about Mungret. But Kildima Palace now backs to the wall, and we had kind of singled them out as a team that could break into the top two. Now, you did say Mungret in fairness, Joe, but South Liberties have the win, that it's a chance for South Liberties to kind of put Kildimo in the rearview mirror if you want to move on to 4 and leave Kildimo on 0, whereas for Kildimo it's not the end of the world if they lose, but you're kind of looking at solidifying your status as a senior team as opposed to promotion, that even after week 1 there's so much on the line.
Jack, South Liberties are the one team that are perplexing me, because if you look back on 2021, they had a fantastic win over Blackrock in the opening round, and were expected to complete the job when they met Garris-Spillane, and lo and behold, they went down to Garris-Spillane. Now, they got through to the quarterfinals on the best scoring difference by virtue of the fact of their big win over Blackrock. And I suppose it dampened the expectations of Forum for the quarterfinal when they came up, especially against Kilmallock. And you'd have to say they were one of the unlucky teams of last year that didn't pull off a result in that quarterfinal.
Yeah.
As we all know, they scored 5 goals against Kilmallock, and they did everything, Jack, but win the hurling match. And it took Kilmallock extra time before seeing them off. Now, they started off this year with a win over Garris-Spillane, and they'll be looking to build on it. And as you say, that they will be looking to put Kildima Paleskinry in the rear view mirror. But how Kildima Paleskinry will react to defeat by Mungret raises a question. That's a huge disappointment for them, because excuse me, expectations must have been high in Kildima Paleskinry going in this year. But like we did flag it last week about very often the second year syndrome clicks in. And for that reason, I think we both went for Mungret to win that game.
Yeah.
So I think this is a very, very, very difficult game. It's a very, very difficult game for Kildima Paleskinry.
Yeah, I was at the KP game.
It's probably equally difficult for South Liberties, because basically what South Liberties are going to turn up. Is it the South Liberties that lost to Gareth Spillane last year, or is it the South Liberties that almost beat Kilmallock last year?
Yeah, yeah, it is. I suppose South Liberties have that money in the bank that they have to win. That it's not, a terrible scenario to have one win after 2 games. It's not the greatest, but conversely, Killine were on nothing at the moment. And I was at that game against Mungret, and like, to be fair to Kyle, was exceptional on the day. He was phenomenally good. He scored 1-4. He won nearly every puck out came down on him, and he won an awful lot of them. Or if he didn't win them, he was breaking them. He was turning over ball. His goal was standard enough for Kyle. Ball broke around 65 out and picked it up and straight through the middle. And look, there's no stopping him. He gets going. It was the supporting cast that never got going. And you talk about second season syndrome. If those lads, don't do what they did last year, KP won't, they won't improve, which they have been on an upward trajectory for 5 years, which is very hard to, continue. But when you have a player like Kyle, if you can just build around him, you have that standout player. But through no fault of his, were they beaten by Munger. But again, backs to the wall. South Liberties have very little to lose. But as you said, it depends on what these teams show up on Saturday evening. If it's the KPA last year, they'd beat any team. If it's South Liberties that played against Kilmallock, they'd fancy themselves to beat anyone. So it's another really intriguing tie.
Absolutely. It's a really, really intriguing tie that you could make compelling cases for either of them to win it.
Yeah, and we will get into that, who we think will come away to win. On Friday night, Gareth Spillane versus Black Rock, 2 round 1 losers. I suppose looking to kickstart their season. They have a good rivalry. They played last year. Their group, obviously, with South Liberties last year, was one that everyone beat everyone kind of a job, and it was only points difference that set them through. Black Rock were well beaten by Ballybrown. You were there, and I suppose without saying too much about Ballybrown, because we will get into them, we'll talk about Mungret and their game against Mungret, obviously. What did you make of Black Rock?
They were comfortably beaten by Ballybrown. Once Ballybrown got in front and got ahead on them, there was little or no doubt at all about the result. And they had the deal sealed a long way out, I thought. And I thought Black Rock struggled in a number of areas of the field. And I think it's going to be.
Was it the case that Ballybrown were very good though and didn't let him hurl? Or?
Well, there was an element of that. Colin Coughlin was in excellent form. Now, Aidan O'Connor had a quiet first half, but by God, did he thunder into it in the second half. And Black Rock found it very, very hard to counteract him or to cope with him. But Black Rock only saved their skins last year by a playoff win over Monaleen.
Yeah.
And I'm on this performance, I'd be slightly worried for Black Rock. But I suppose if there was anything to focus their minds, I suppose it's ideally that a game against Gareth Spillane is the one that's coming up immediately after it.
Yeah.
Now they up to last year, Jack, they had a horrendous record against Gareth Spillane. But lo and behold, they got a very, very good result against Gareth Spillane in the championship, in the Gaelic grounds last year. So that will give you an idea that it is in Black Rock. It's a question of getting it out of them. Now, I saw him playing earlier in the year against Kilmallock. It was in the deferred 2021 South League final. Now, Kilmallock were down the county players of both under 20 and senior on the same night, plus a couple more. But Black Rock dug out a good win. And Ollie Moran is doing a very good job, in my opinion, with the resources that he has at his disposal. And as I said, Gareth Spillane will be an ideal game. And there will be a bit of extra pressure on Gareth Spillane now because of the fact that they lost to South Liberties in the first round. So I saw Gareth Spillane also in the league semi-final against Napirshick. They were horrendous in the first half. The way they played in the second half, there isn't a team in the group would come near them. So you just wonder where is the real Gareth Spillane. Now they are knocked, they are hit by a few injuries, but they have Mark Quinlan back among their ranks after a long time out with injury, who's a huge plus to any team. So this is an equally interesting game. That there's intense rivalry between these two.
Yeah,
And
it seems to be a case for a lot of teams that if they can find their A game, they could well get into that senior A or senior one, whatever you want to call it. But it's finding that A game that they kind of seem to struggle with. And I think, with no respect to any of the teams, I think maybe Blackrock and Gareth Spillane would have singled out this game as if we can get the job done here, we can actually look up instead of looking down. So it's an intriguing game. And obviously then Munger St. Paul's. Go on.
It's an early season relegation battle, if you like. Or it's an early season 4-pointer. Because
I would say
the
4-pointer.
The upshot of it for the losers is, to overtake the winners, they have to at least get a win and a draw in the remaining 3 games.
Yeah. It is a 4-pointer straight away, and it'll be massive for whoever can come through it. Probably the break is coming at the wrong time for the winners and the ideal time for the losers just to regroup. But the other game in the group then is Munger St. Paul's versus Ballybrown on Saturday at 7:00 in Clahan. I was at the Munger Lion Palace Kinnery game, and like in their first game back in the senior ranks, without Liam Lynch, without Rory Duff, who would have probably you would have considered their 2 best players maybe for a lot of people, Rory in the middle and Liam Lynch as the scoring force. They took their time to get into the game. A real physical contest, extremely physical, one of the most physical games I've ever seen. And 2 sides that like to play a nice brand of hurling, so it was very, very good to see that from both teams. But I suppose in the second half, as good as Kyle was, Paul O'Brien was outstanding for Munger St. Paul's. He got 110. He manufactured a goal from nothing. Some of the other players got into the game in the second half, the likes of Brian O'Mara at centre forward started to get into a lot of ball, and they'd impact from the sub. Conor Halloran and Keane O'Brien both got points. That it is a squad effort from Mungreth, and they are building, and to get that monkey off their back after they would have considered themselves a senior team for a long time now, just couldn't get out of Premier Intermediate. To be there and get a win is huge, but they're facing the acid test of Group 2 in Ballybrown, and you will tell us about how good Ballybrown were against Blackrock. I know you kind of alluded to it, but you were telling me during the week that you were very impressed by him.
Yeah, I was impressed by him, and it was interesting there that you should mention physicality, because I have rarely, if ever, seen a team as physically strong, as physically well built as Ballybrown. And they're absolutely giants of men, practically without exception. And certainly they won't be found wanting in the physicality stakes. And I liked them, and I thought their half-back line in particular, I thought they really, really gave Blackrock no opportunity whatsoever. Now, it should be said like that, Blackrock are down a couple of players from last year. Dahi Heffernan and Nigel Hosford are abroad, and Kevin Palmer, who is certainly one of their key players. Kevin Palmer was missing through injury last week. Whether he'll be back now to face Gareth Spillane or not, I'm not sure. But Ballybrown are a very, very, very competent side, and we were saying here last week when we were crystal ball gazing into seeing who might be likely to be the 2 teams in Section B and a possible winner. I certainly went for Ballybrown, and my mind hasn't changed, Jack, from what I saw last Saturday night.
Yeah, it's one that I'm planning on going to anyway. I think it's going to be a fascinating game. I was really impressed with Mungreth. A very different game style to the one they had against Cappamore. It was far more hard fought, dugout kind of win, which teams need to do as well. They've added a couple to the team. Conor Linehan and Billy Mullinall came into the side, and Brendan Gittilan from the team that won last year. So like we were saying to Kilmallock, it's not the same 15. They've had the injuries and they've just got on with it. So it was good to get a win, but they are going to face a far different test in Ballybrown. We'll get to the predictions in a while, Matt, but just to go through the other results across the competitions, and we will stay in touch with all of them. It's hard to keep up with all of them. Bruff 217 to 112 winners over Effin. Drumnat Lacca 113 to 112 against Knockany. Newcastle West and Glenroe drew, which is becoming pretty much standard for those teams. And Monaleen were 2-point winners against Cappamore, 20 points to 115. You were at the Bruff game, Matt, and we had kind of earmarked Effin as a team to watch, but Bruff have laid out a statement already.
Yeah, well, we did qualify it by saying at the finish that, well, I did anyway, that I thought that Bruff would finish in the top 4, and I've little or no reason to change my mind on that. I actually, any doubt that I had before Saturday night, I have much less doubt about that now. Yeah, Bruff were very, very, very competent. They made a very smart move before the game because Sean Finn was named to play at centre half back, and Paul Brown was named at centre half forward. And they changed them around, a direct swap, and it put Sean Finn indirectly on Nicky Quaid. And whilst Nicky Quaid had a fine game himself, he wasn't able to exert the same level of influence. The way he absolutely dictates games because of the presence of Sean Finn. And certainly Sean Finn, the fact that he was up there, I think it made that a bit of extra space. And Danny O'Leary, who ended up with 110, and to a lesser extent Chris Brown, they really capitalised on it. And of course, Sean Finn showed that he wasn't entirely lost up in the forwards by knocking over 2 lovely points during the course of the game. But I was disappointed with Effin, I would have to say, Jack. I spoke there earlier on about a Han having 19 wides. Well, Effin tried to emulate him in that race, in that they had 15, and some of them at crucial stages, because if your opponents are incrementally and slowly building a lead, the trick to rein them in is to try and keep in touch by knocking over points. And they missed a few points both from play and from frees. Now they're down a couple of players from last year, including Connor Carney, who's not available this year, and PJ Herr, and Patrick O'Donovan is carrying an injury, Jack, which certainly militated against him making an impact in the game. And look, Effin were very, very disappointing, and they will need to pick it up pretty quickly, Jack. I was of the opinion from what we saw in the county final last year that that you could see Effin driving on at Premier Intermediate. At this stage, it's only 1 game in now. We'd have to qualify it by saying, but I'm not so sure it's going to happen. And they have a crucial game coming up this weekend when they face Drummond Clacker in the second round.
Yeah.
Now, it'll give you an idea of what this competition is. I think for the most part, we got our predictions right for the senior. I certainly got my predictions for the Premier Intermediate spectacularly wrong, without exception, practically.
Yeah, I would have went for Drumnat Lacca. I'd say that would have been the only one. And Glenroe and Newcastle have played out a couple of draws in recent years, so maybe. But yeah, that's the nature of the beast.
There's been great rivalry between them, and there was only a point between them when Newcastle West won it last year. And I suppose this is further testimony to the fact that there's nothing between those two sides.
Yeah,
but Glenroe had put themselves into a winning position. 5 points up on the home straight. Conceded 2 goals and had to rely on a late point to get an equaliser and a share of the spoils.
Yeah, I'll run through
that's not a good idea,
I'll run through the games this weekend, and I suppose you can just kind of give your opinion as you go through them. Knockany were beaten in the first round against Bruff. Bruff to make it 2 from 2.
Yeah, I think Bruff will make it 2 from 2. Of course, there's huge rivalry between them. They're right beside each other. It'll give you an idea of how they're interlinked in there, and that Bruff Rugby Club is in the parish of Knockany. So that will give you an idea of how close up to each other they are. Yeah, I'm going for Bruff from what I saw the other evening. There was a lot of things I liked about Bruff. As I say, Jack, my view last week that Rough would make the top 4 has been copper fastened by what I saw last Saturday evening. I think they're a very, very useful side. And of course, Rough were never shot the hurlers. It was a question of just getting it out of them, and certainly they showed it on Saturday evening. And Sean Finn had a huge influence. Now, Paul Brown had a great game at centre back, Jack.
Well, he's the sort of player that you could kind of play anywhere, and so is Sean. So it's great to see our cornerbacks up the field, doing their stuff in the forwards. Obviously, Barry plays way out the field for South Liberties as well. But moving through the games, Matt, they're all at 7 o'clock on Saturday evening. That Knockany Bruff game was on in Kilbreedy. Cappamore versus Newcastle West on in Kilmallock. That was a repeat of last year's semi-final. The Cappamore won. Cappamore obviously lost their first game this year. Newcastle West drew. Which way do you see that one going?
Well, Jack, when you asked for the top 4 last week, the first 2 I named were Monaleen and Cappamore. And as it happened, they were playing last Saturday evening or last Friday evening. But I was speaking with somebody that was at it, and he was absolutely waxing lyrical about these 2 teams. First of all, they had a fantastic contest, and I stopped short of saying last week that it could be potentially a county final dress rehearsal last week, but apparently from what I'm hearing, that they're 2 outstanding sides, and I'm going for Cappamore to repeat it. Like there was a big margin between them last year, Jack.
Yeah.
But notwithstanding that, it would look to me as if Cappamore are going to drive on, and I'm going for Cappamore on that one.
I'd agree with you there. Monaleen and Glenroe, you just spoke about how good Monaleen are, but
yeah,
Glenroe
I'm going
special...
for Monaleen, Jack. Put no tooth in it. Glenroe are up against it in this one.
Obviously senior last year. That's
the point. Either. And it was a testimony in last week to see how they adapt, and how they recover from the shock, because relegation, whenever it comes, even though you might be expecting it a couple of games out, it's always a shock, and it's a question of how you recover from it. And the answer to that is, by all accounts, very, very well, thank you. And I'm going for Monaleen to make it 2 out of 2.
I'd agree with you there as well. I suppose on that point, it's never guaranteed that if you go down, you go back straight back up, and we've seen that with Maru, obviously double relegation. So a credit to Monaleen that they can just hit the ground running. And obviously the final game, you alluded to already, Drumnat Laka and Effin.
It's a huge game, Jack. It's a huge game, and just to put it into context, Drumnat Laka beat Knockany by a point. David Reedy only played for the last 3 or 4 minutes, which means that that he's easing his way back from whatever injury he's suffered, and that he's likely to start, and that could be the difference between the teams. Of course, you players like Keane Scully now coming through as well in Drumnat Laka, Sean O'Leary and these guys, and I suppose if you asked me to predict this game before last weekend, I would give you a different answer. I would probably have said Effin, but I'm leaning towards Drumnat Laka, and judging on what I saw last weekend.
Yeah, and also Drumnat Laka can put a player in at centre forward on Nicky Quaid in the shape of David Reedy if you want to try and curb his influence. So yeah, I can see that one being a draw now. It's very evenly poised. That's Premier Intermediate Championship. In the Intermediate Championship, just run through the results. Brewery beat Marubohar 120-16. The Piercing were narrow winners over Fiona, and we've all seen that Shane Dowell in goal, and we'll get to that in a minute. Croom and Caroline played out a draw. Caroline's first game back in the Intermediate Championship. Crokilfinney with a 1-point win over Granite Ballingarry. Hospital Herbertstown beat Kilmallock by a point, and you had kind of singled out Hospital Herbertstown beforehand. And Palace Green beat Knockaderry by 3 points. A lot to digest from that there, Matt. Obviously, Shane Dowling's goal, first and foremost, it's brilliant to see him back playing. He's I'd say Shane is probably only 29 at this stage, and he's been retired the bones of 2 years for Limerick, maybe 3 years. So first and foremost, great to see him back, and we could see him in the senior championship. But a win for the Piercing is probably what he'd say to us. He's they're rehearsed answers now. Would be it's all about the team, but it must have been a really satisfying moment for him and for the Piercy to get that win against Fiona, who we said would have their say in this championship.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely delighted to see Shane back. Like it was one of our saddest days when Shane had to call time in his inter-county career. A huge blow, both first of all to himself, his family, and indeed to Limerick. So it's great to see him back, even though it's down at intermediate level. And I'd say knowing the man, it's the first step in working his way back. And then to embellish it with a goal that won the match, that's the stuff of romance. That's the stuff of dreams. But but the act of the impossible. But how many times has he done it on the hurling field in the past? So why are we surprised that he's still doing it, even though it is only his first game back? But absolutely fantastic result from the Piercy and a fantastic return for Shane Dowling.
Yeah, and look, it's very hard to call these championships. I'll just run through the fixtures this weekend, and you might just give me.
Jack, before we go away, there are two things that I would like to note about I was out to see two of the games this weekend, and I saw one of the best performances I think I've seen at that level for a long time in young Sam Connolly of Brewery, who scored a goal and 9 points. He scored about 4 from play. He got 4 from frees. 3 from frees and 1 from a 65. A goal from a penalty. And he embellished the whole lot with the last score of the game with an absolutely sublimely struck ball. This lad is only 20. And he certainly is one with a huge future. Now, I was impressed with Brody. And, of course, they were beaten semi-finalists last year. But they have a huge game this weekend with Fiona.
Yeah, I'm just going to get to here now.
But before I depart from the Brewery game, in goals for Muru Bohar is the next member of that great goalkeeping dynasty, Killian Quaid. Right. Son of Joe and cousin of Nicky. And he is a typical Quaid goalkeeper. He kept a clean sheet were it not for a sublimely struck penalty, brilliantly struck penalty by Sam Connolly. He would have kept a clean sheet. And he's a goalkeeper with a big future, Jack.
Yeah, now that Conor Henry Clark is out the field, there's room there for another Quaid, and we won't say no. We've seen how successful they've been before. I'll just run through the Group 1, Matt. I'd say that the 3 fixtures, and you can just give me the 3 names you think will come out on top. You have Fiona versus Brewery on Sunday at 2 o'clock in Fina. That's what I'm looking for the afternoon games. Caroline versus the Piercy, also on Sunday at 7 in Clahon. And then Croom versus Muru Bohar on Thursday evening in Fedamore at 7.
Yeah, Jack, I think Brewery will just about share it, but it'll be very, very close against Fiona. I think the Piercy, will just probably get the better of Caroline. And I would say Muru Bohar hurting after the first round victory. They didn't do an awful lot wrong, but it was a game that was tit for tat, and the goal came in the 37th minute from the penalty for Brewery, and it was quite obvious that whoever was going to get a goal was going to win the hurling match, and that's exactly what happened. But a slight worry about Muru Bohar. I thought that once the goal went in, that as the game progressed, their challenge seemed to peter out a small bit, and. Okay. Yeah, but I'm expecting that Muru Bohar, of course, you see, Muru Bohar were relegated last year.
Yeah.
And, we were obviously looking to see how they react to it. And I thought for 40 minutes on Sunday that they were doing quite well, but then Brewery seemed to step on the gas now. The general narrative was that, it was whoever was going to get the goal was going to win it, and that's exactly what happened.
So you expect Muru to bounce back?
I think Muru might bounce back and get the better of Crew.
And then Group 2, Palace Green versus Crow Kilfinney. Kilmallock versus Knockderry. Sorry, Palestine Kilkenny is on the Friday in Mungret at 7 o'clock. Then you've Kilmallock versus Knockderry Saturday in Ballygran at Sunday at 2 o'clock. And Hospital Herberstown versus Granaballingary Sunday in Kilfinnan at 2 o'clock. So Palestine Kilkenny.
Just a small bit of context to these games, Jack, is that I saw the Kilmallock Hospital Herberstown game on Sunday evening. And this was a game between the team that had just won the County Intermediate League, Hospital Herberstown, and the team that had withdrawn from the competition. So, like, Kilmallock came into pure raw. They had no game played. And they were so close to winning it. It was a high-scoring game, 121 to 217. I think they were level 8 times during the game. And Hospital Herberstown just edged it in the end. Now, I was disappointed with Hospital Herberstown, I have to say. I was expecting more from them after they're winning the league. But look, first round of the championship, Jack, is about getting the job done. They went out. Now, they were a good bit below their best. There's no question about that. But, you know, they learned a solitary lesson, you know, Jack, that there's a chasm between league and championship hurling. Like, when you go into the championship, it's welcome to the real world.
Yeah.
But getting back to your actual question, I think Croke Kilfinny will edge it against Palace Green. They were last year's runners up. I don't think they have done anything that would suggest, you know, that they have regressed in any way. So I'm going for Croke, but I think it will be tight. It will be tight. That particular game will be tight. Yeah.
Kilmallock Knockderry.
Yeah, you know, again, it will be close, but I think Knockderry will try and bounce back and win that one.
And Hospital Herberstown Granaballingary.
Third time in 4 years that they have met in the championship. Hospital Herberstown have won the previous two in 2020, in 2019 and 2020. I'm going for Granaballingary just to make it third time lucky.
No, and obviously then the Junior A championship. I'll just run through the fixtures here. There's so many, or the results. There's so many of them to get through. Coromanister beats Decker Wallace 216-16. Tabberglanton lay down a marker 323 to 110 winners over Black Rock. Ballybrick and Bohermore 113 to 12 point winners over Drum Broadford. In Group 2, St. Pat's and Killeedy drew. Monaghay beat a Hanwell 514 to 110. And Clahan had the minimum over Castle Ballygran 215 to 117. And into the Group 3, Fianna Kilmeedy 311, Munger St. Paul's 1-8. Two were heavy winners over Ballybrown 423 to 111. And St. Kieran's and Askeaton. That's on this Thursday night. The game was postponed due to bereavement. So I suppose condolences to the family, the McGrath family, and their sad passing to Larne. And then into Group 4, you had Tournafulla beat Rackeel 217 to 112. Patrickswell 120 to 14 point winners over Old Christians, and Kilteely Drumkeen 510 to 28 winners over Carricksfillan. Full round of fixtures, you can get them on the website. I've posted up on it there. But from what you saw there, Matt,
I suppose the standout result there was Strahan over Castletown Ballygran.
You had mentioned Strahan in fairness, sure.
I did mention it, but I did mention them that if they got all their resources together, that they would be strong. But if we were doing predictions on those games, I would certainly have come down on the side of Castletown Ballygran, I must admit. But it's nice to see the revival of Clahan, Jack, inside, and you know, and I suppose another result to note there would be the victory of Doon over Ballybrown. Like, Ballybrown were making shapes last year, particularly at junior level, that they had a decent side, but certainly they suffered a very, very heavy defeat. Now, I'm going out to a game this Wednesday evening, Jack. That's the first of the second round games, and what a game it is! What a game it promises to be. Black Rock and the Stakers. Pardon?
Any food to call it?
Jack, why do you always have to go a bridge too far?
I can't let you just go enjoy these games.
I'm sitting on the fence because I'll be lacerated no matter what way I go. But I'm not poking a ball. I'm not poking a ball for either side.
Yeah, it's only Wednesday, and we're already back in championship action, which is great to see. Before we get into predictions, Matt, just a couple of business matters to get to. The Legends match in Maru, which is on next Saturday, and I know you'll be away next weekend. So, Saturday the 13th in Boher Pitch. If you just want to, I suppose, give your spoke about it.
Yeah, Jack, this is for a very, very good cause. It's for Crumlin's Children's Hospital, and it's been organised by Alan Foley, whose daughter who thankfully has been restored to full health, had occasion in her early days to use Crumlin's Children's Hospital, and she got such excellent treatment there that Alan has put together this Legends match. And when you're looking for rivalries, I suppose, and especially over around Maru and Boher, there's no greater rivalries than Limerick and Tipperary. So he has two teams organised, two teams of legends from Limerick and Tipperary. The Limerick team will be managed by Eamon Cregan, jointly managed by Eamon Cregan and Richie Bennis, and Conor O'Donovan from Bomley, from Effin, and a 2 times All-Ireland medal winner with Tipperary. He will be the manager of the Tipperary team. And it looks at this stage that people like Brendan Cummins, Paul Curran, Owen Kelly, Michael Cleary will be among those that will be lining out in the Tipperary colours. And taking a trip back in time for Limerick, you'll have Steve McDonough, Joe Quaid, Mark Foley, Tom Condon, Kieran Carey, Albert Shanahan, and there's a contingent of ex-Limerick players that are from the Maru Boher Club. You have the 3 Tobin brothers, Pat, Kevin, and Shawnee, and Paddy Mack and Willie Walsh, all from the local club. Now there'll be a number of guests on the evening. And this is potential to be a great family occasion, and all for a very, very good cause. The McCarthy Cup will be present in Boher on Saturday evening at 2:00, and there with it will be Keane Lynch, Am Gillan, Dermot Burns, Pat Ryan, David Reedy, Barry Nash, and possibly more to come. And also there will be the 2021 All-Ireland Puck Fodder champion, who was unlucky to lose the Puck Fodder at the weekend on Monday, Colin Ryan. So there's a star-studded cast for the game. It's going to be a star-studded attendance as well. And it will be all rounded off with music and a barbecue in McGrath's pub afterwards, during which there will be a raffle. Now, it's for a very, very, very good cause, Crumlin's Children's Hospital. And anybody that could and should come out there on Saturday week at 2:00 in Boher, come out and support a very, very good cause, and there will be a great evening's entertainment.
Yeah, obviously it's a brilliant cause, but there's as you said, it's great entertainment to see all those players and to see the Liam McCarthy. You mentioned Colin Ryan there, and obviously he runner-up on Monday in the defence of his Puck Fodder title. Very close. Tyke Body was the same. He finished second under 16s category. John Chalk was thereabouts in the men's category. Not to be for Limerick, which we're not really used to in these days, to not winning, but a valiant effort by the trio.
A valiant effort by all three, and apparently, and I'm not 100% off with the scoring method that's employed in the long puck, Jack, but apparently Colin Ryan and Tyke Body both were only just a matter of meters short, a couple of meters short of that elusive first place. Killian Phelan from Kilkenny was the winner. And I'd say he came out of the woodwork a bit, Jack, to win it, because Colin Ryan was their defending champion, the champion for the 2 years previous that it was held. It was wasn't held one year because of the COVID. Killian Kiley from Offaly, he was there. Neil McManus from Antrim, John Chalk, they were all in the field. But I'd say he certainly didn't come up on the radar as one of the potential winners at the start. But that's what happened. He won it. And Dara Smith from Westmeath just edged out Tyke Body in the under 16. But very, very interesting. In the ladies, in the Camogie, there was a Cork double. And not just a Cork double, but it was two sisters, Molly and Lucy Lynch, the two sisters from Sarsfields. Molly, who was sub-goalkeeper with the Cork senior Camogie team, and her sister Lucy, they took the All-Ireland senior and under 16, which was a phenomenal achievement and a unique achievement.
Yeah, it's very unique that it will go back to the same home probably. Just on the Win a Peugeot, Matt, I suppose we haven't talked about it in a while. That it's there's less than a month to get your tickets in online sales till the 26th of August. The draw is on the 2nd. It's only 20 quid for a ticket to win that Peugeot. As we said before, you're feeding back into Limerick Che, and we've seen how successful they have been in recent years. So if you're interested,
Jack, we cannot emphasize enough the importance to support the draw, and being with a chance of winning a Peugeot. But we've all been so gratified over the last 5 years, winning 4 All-Irelands, and that doesn't happen by chance, and it needs financing. And I would appeal to people to dig deep and support this draw, and get tickets for it. And you're in with a chance of winning a Peugeot. I enter these things, usually, and I'm being 100% right so far, Jack. I enter these things on the basis that I haven't a hope of winning. So,
you'll get a good surprise. You'll get a good surprise someday. You'll get a good surprise someday if you're entering without a chance of winning and you do win. But win a Peugeot.ie.
You'd need to upgrade it to Shock, Jack.
Yeah, true. Winnapeugeot.ie anyway is where you can go to get those tickets, and it's simple as a few clicks, and that money does go to support the Limerick County teams that have been so good to us in recent years. Before we finish up, Matt, our predictions, as usual, we'll just go through the 6 senior games. At the moment, you're leading narrowly 15-14. The only game we went different at the weekend was a Dare and a Han, and they drew. So we were close with the results in a couple of games. Yeah, I think we had Liberties by 3 or 4, and they won by 2, and same with Mungret. I had them by 2, we had them by 1, and they won by 3, and there was a lot of close ones there, but no game spot on the money. But 5 out of 6 isn't the worst. We'll get into this week's, Matt, and we'll start with the big one: the Piershig versus Kilmallock.
Kilmallock by 2.
Kilmallock by 2. I'm going to go for the Piershig. Not only to go against you, but I just think the Piershig by 2. They're a great know how to get the win, but it's a really tight game. Doon and Adair.
I'm going with Doon by 4.
Doon by 4. I'm going to go Doon by 6. I think they'll regroup after the first round win and just put a marker out there. And a Han versus Patrickswell.
Going by a Han to share it by a point.
A Han by a point. I'm going to go Patrickswell by 3. Just to regroup. Lion Palace versus South Liberties.
I'm going for Liberties by 2.
And I am going to go for KP by 2. So we have a lot of difference here anyway. So far, if anything, there will be a change there. Garryspillane versus Blackrock.
Garryspillane by 3.
I'm going to go by Garryspillane by the minimum by a point. And Mungret St. Paul's versus Ballybrown.
Ballybrown by 3.
Ballybrown plus 3. I'm going to go with Mungret by the minimum there by a point. So the Piershig's Kilmallock. I said the Piershig said Kilmallock. Doon Adair, both said Doon. A Han Parswell. I said the well use of the Han. Mungret St. Paul's Ballybrown. I said Mungret. You said Ballybrown. Garryspillane versus Blackrock. Both in agreement with Gareth Bland and KP were South Liberties. I said KP, you said Liberties. So there's a lot of change there, or a lot of difference that we will actually, for the first time in a while, have different interests in all the games. But as we always say, it's just for a bit of fun. We're not poking the ball or kicking or anything in these games. It's all for a bit of fun. Also this weekend, Matt, we have the return of the Premier League, and I know you've vested interest in Everton. How do you see that going for the year?
I see him struggling, Jack. One thing hasn't changed is the manner in which the football club has been run, and I would be very, very critical of that. I hope to get over there pretty shortly. But I've been following Everton Football Club with nearly 6 decades, and why Everton Football Club have had such a great tradition is because they have been so well run and so carefully run. But that has all changed in the last 6 or 7 years, and certainly for me, that's somebody that's a diehard. It's very, very, very hard to take, and it's very, very, very hard to understand, and how they have found themselves in such difficulty with financial fair play. It's just mind-boggling. So some of the stuff that's going on, and like if you expect me to say that they're going to win the league or that they'll get into Europe, no. But my best case scenario for this year is that they'll do better than last year, which is a minor statement. Yeah, I don't think that they will. I don't think that they will have relegation trouble, and I would be one of the ones now that one of the Everton supporters, Jack, that would be 100% behind the manager. I think we have very, very good manager now, and one of the best players I think I've ever seen playing the game, and I'm so glad to have him on board, and I think in time that he will prove to be a great manager. Whether it's with Everton or not, I don't know, because Mr. Mashiri, in his wisdom, changes managers like people who change handkerchiefs. So I think he should get an opportunity, and I certainly think he's going the right direction. But if you ask me if I'm looking forward to a Premier League, I never look forward less to a Premier League, because I can see it being a certain element of a struggle.
And the noisy neighbours, Liverpool, who I support, that will be in the running for the league title.
I can see it being a straight fight between Liverpool and Manchester City, but possibly Manchester City, it will all depend on whether Haaland can get the goals or not, Jack.
Yeah, or Darwin Núñez for Liverpool.
Yeah, but I would think that based on what I have seen and based on the respective lineups, I would think that the scales might be tipping in Liverpool's favour this year, and it doesn't give me any joy to say it,
Yeah, well, it certainly gives me joy to hear you say that.
Yeah, but we'd want to be watching Arsenal as well. I think they've recruited pretty well during the summer. And will Haaland? Big question for Manchester City. Will Haaland replace Jesus? And Sterling? Like that, there are 2 big names gone. A lot of goals gone there.
Well, hopefully, I don't want to see anyone do badly, but from a Liverpool point of view, you're hoping he takes his time to settle in and that Núñez hits the ground running. But that's enough soccer for the year now. That's our soccer out of the way for the rest of the year. Loads of hurling to look forward to. Obviously, on Saturday night, Kilmallock na Piarsaigh, that's live on Limerick TV. You can purchase that game, as I said, on the website, or you can go into the Sport Limerick website and you'll find the necessary links. It's one I'm starting to look forward to. But there's a host of games. If you go into the website, there's a fixture list for all the games. As Matt said, we're starting tonight with Blackrock versus Staker Wallace, and we won't be finished till Sunday evening. So there's 28 games, I think, over the next 5 days. We said Thursday to Sunday. So get out to them as many as you can, because they certainly delivered in round 1, Matt, and you'd imagine more of the same this weekend.
Yeah, I expect more of the same this weekend, and I expect to see big crowds at the games as well. And I would just reiterate my appeal to the powers that be. If they could just spread them out a small bit more, I think there'd be an awful lot more people happy.
Yeah,
and it poses a logistical problem for us that are covering it as well. Let's put our hands up and say like we have a vested interest in it. But the message I'm bringing back is the message that I had on the ground, and I was at 5 games over 3 different levels over the weekend, and so I think I got a fair cross section of public opinion on it. All very satisfied with structures, all very satisfied with the fare that was on offer, but that slight element of discontent about the fact that so many games are on at the same time.
Yeah, that's one thing we could take from this. Just maybe spread them out. Just a small bit of spreading. Obviously, you won't be able to go to every game, but if you go to more, that'd be ideal. Maybe 2 games a day, Saturday and Sunday. But for now, anyway.
Yeah, because the Senior Football Championship, Jack, and you got the fixtures just like I got them last evening for the 3rd round. There's a good spread out of those fixtures now. In the senior, if we could get something similar between the senior and the Premier Intermediate, there has to be a number of games on every evening. There's 28 games, call a spade a spade. But if the senior and Premier Intermediate could be spread over 4 days, I think an awful lot of people would be much happier. And if we could go down the road of double fixtures.
Yeah, that's certainly something that hopefully people look into. But as we said from the outset, we don't envy anyone having to make those decisions and to fix games. But
we certainly don't.
No, we have an hour and 20 on the clock there.
We have no plans on swapping with him at any time soon either, Jack.
No, we certainly don't. 81 minutes there on the pod, Matt. I think it was pretty insightful from you from all the games you were at. And there's loads of games forward to this weekend. So again, I thank you, Matt, for your contributions, and to everyone that listened and commented, etc. We'll be back next week. Well, Matt, you're on your holidays, so wish you the best luck in your holidays. And there'll be someone trying to replace you, but I don't know will they be able to. But until then, enjoy the holidays, enjoy the games.
Enjoy the holidays. Getting tired of the old fogey now complaining, I
know you're leaving the complaining. As long as Limerick are winning, you're fine. So thank God we've had the bones of 5 years of that, and we've brilliant club championships as well. So again, a huge thank you to you, Matt, and to everyone that tuned in, and we'll be in touch next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Impression the game we get out with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
Not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods, and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tommaso Sheahy, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the workout today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time